What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 18 of the College Sports Guy. We've got a busy episode coming up. Ohio State, Penn State fans, I think you guys deserve to be heard, to have a sit-down conversation. I'm going to talk with y'all man to man. Texas A&M, South Carolina, we're going to talk about that as well. And folks, it's November officially, which means the college basketball season is right around the corner. Tomorrow night, Baylor plays Gonzaga. And yes, this is the College Sports Guy. This is not the College Football Guy. And I love my college football. College football fans, don't worry. Your content will be delivered at the rate that it has been delivered. But college basketball fans, we got a lot planned. I'm working on a top 25 episode coming out this week with some futures on it as well. Those that are betting men, feel free to tail. And while college hoop season is starting, because there's going to be a lot more content coming out, I'm going to get into some announcements where you can find everything. If you want a full episode, if you are in the car, driving to work, you've got a 20, 30 minute, 15 minute drive, hours long road trip, go to Spotify. That is at the College Sports Guy. You can find the full episode on Spotify. If you are just chilling and you have a downtime of like 5-10 minutes and you're like, hey, I want to look up something on YouTube. I want to hear about the College Sports Guy talk about one team. Right here on YouTube at the College Sports Guy is where I will post all of my clips. Every single 5-minute, 3-minute, 8-minute clip will be on here. That's again on YouTube at the College Sports Guy. And I want to thank y'all for the engagement, by the way. We're 2.5 months into this thing. We've got over 4K subscribers already. Never would I have thought that it would have come this fast. You guys are the best. Seriously, thank y'all so much for that. I'm going to keep trying to work hard and give y'all as much content as y'all want. And y'all got any show ideas or any opinions, comments you want me to get to? Please comment them in the section. I read some of them. There's a lot of them. So I try to do my best, but comment them. I'll get to them. And in terms of the picks, because y'all have given me so much positive engagement, I want to give y'all something in return, completely for free. All of my picks on Twitter can be found on @Harris6_ on Twitter. We made $650 yesterday. I did, at least. We're up 17 units. We're 23-7 against the spread. We're up thousands this year betting on college football. So folks, I can't stress this enough. I'm not charging any money for those picks. All that you have to do is follow and turn on post notifications to where you can find every single one of those picks. All right there. So that being said, enough about me. Those are the announcements. To reiterate, you can find the full episodes on Spotify at the College Sports Guy. You can find clips on YouTube at the College Sports Guy, and on Twitter at Harris6_ you can find all of my picks. I list them out. I list out how much money I'm putting on each of them. And sometimes I list out which sports books so you guys can get the best lines as well. We're doing super well on the season on that. November, a big opportunity for us to make some even more money. And once those futures come in, we're going to be golden as well. Already up thousands. Again, let's get to the games. That being said, this was what I call week 10 of the 2024 college football season. I have it written down right here. This was what we call a We Now Know Who You Are Saturday. Because coming into this Saturday, the contender bubble was really big. There were a lot of teams with a lot of outcomes. But on Saturday, a lot of those teams got weeded out, and a lot of teams found a way. We found out which teams were contenders, are going to remain contenders, which teams are not. For example, Pitt, coming in 7-0, got boat raced by SMU. They're probably not a contender. Texas A&M, undefeated in conference play, got obliterated by South Carolina. Penn State, a lot of talk if they finally eclipse that tier 1 tier. Didn't look like it last Saturday. Looked still pretty clearly tier 2. Clemson, coming in at 6-2 now. If you're Clemson, you've lost against Louisville, you've lost against Georgia, you have one opportunity left to get a win over a top 25 opponent. That's South Carolina at the end of the year. Clemson is potentially looking at the wrong side of the bubble come playoff time. They're going to need a lot of help. So, Pitt, Texas A&M, Penn State, Clemson, and the last one, how about the Big 12? The Big 12's chances of being a two-bid league got massively massively in jeopardy is the right way to say it. Kansas State losing to Houston, Iowa State losing to Texas Tech plus 400, by the way. We took that. So all of a sudden, there might only be one Big 12 team in, which brings me to this point. So yes, who was the biggest winner on Saturday? Those 10-2, 9-3 SEC teams, I'm talking the Tennessees, I'm talking the Ole Misses, the LSUs, the Alabamas, among others, those were the biggest winners because they could be competing with 11-1 teams for playoff slots. And the Big 12 losing a couple top teams in the Big 12 losing a couple games that it shouldn't opens things up for those teams. But you know what? We also learned about who the contenders are because say what you want about these teams, it has not been pretty, but contenders, man, they find a way. Georgia wasn't pretty against Florida. Guess what? Found a way. They keep scrapping and clawing their way out of these things. That's what they do. Ohio State, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, man. Will Howard pick 6, a fumble that resulted in a touchback. Found a way. Miami, down big against Duke, an underrated story. Duke's not a bad football team, by the way. Guess what? Miami found a way. Tennessee, down in the first half against Kentucky. Guess what? They found a way. Nico probably played his best game of the season in a month. There's something to be noted of there. Those teams continue to find a way. But now, that being said, let's get to the games, folks. Oh, this one's a tough one to talk about. Ohio State 20, Penn State 13. Quick PSA. I want to give y'all some wisdom here. I took Ohio State -2 in the preseason. That brings me to 11-2 against the spread and bets that I took before the month of September. The most important month, this is a PSA for next year. The most important month entailing my bets is August. You say, Harris, there are no games on. That's when we get ahead of the books. For example, in August, I took Oregon -3.5 against Michigan. They came in a 14.5 point favorite against Michigan. We cashed that. No sweat. 2 units, 3 units actually, right there. Just a quick nugget for y'all. But anyway, Ohio State 20, Penn State 13. Penn State fans, my stomach drops. My heart breaks for y'all because y'all have been so assertively in the same spot, same exact tier for 8 years. You've been very good, but there's been just something holding you back from being great, and y'all haven't been able to get over that hump. But let me talk to y'all, the fans, the Penn State fans, man to man, mano a mano here. Y'all are what makes the sport of college football great. And I'm going to give y'all some encouragement because I think that y'all deserve it. Y'all are what makes the sport of college football great. Legit. It doesn't matter if Penn State is 5-7 or 6-6. I have doubts about the Penn State football team. I have never had a doubt about Beaver Stadium. It doesn't matter where they are. They will bring the atmosphere 105,000 plus. Y'all will. And y'all are in that category. I'm going to put y'all in with Nebraska, Auburn, Tennessee in years past, South Carolina, where it doesn't matter what outcome y'all are. Texas A&M, I'll put in there too. Y'all are going to bring your A game. That is what makes the sport of college football great. Because Penn State, in this 8-year span, with a 8-game losing streak to Ohio State, they've lost by an average of 7 points per game. They have not lost a game to Ohio State by more than 2 possessions in this span. Multiple 1-point losses. They've been close. And if you're Penn State, man, in the era of the NIL, and the era in the future where athletic departments can potentially pay players themselves, with the support y'all are giving that program, big days are ahead. It will get better in Happy Valley. I'm confident in it. I believe in it. Speaking of the subject of Penn State fans, let me say this. This should have been a night game. I believe that. I'm not a guy who wants to have a lot of hot takes on the show. This one, I will put my foot down here. I say this should be a night game. And to Fox, the argument is you have big noon kickoff. Okay, here's an idea that I have. You call it the annual big night kickoff with Ohio State and Penn State at night. Remember, when the SEC was on CBS, they had the designated 2:30 slot. The designated 2:30 slot. But Death Valley at night is so unique and so unbelievably spectacular. I mean, Brian Kelly hasn't lost a night home game at LSU since he's coached there. Not one. That puts it in perspective. It's so good that Alabama and LSU, despite CBS having that 2:30 slot Central Time, was a night game every year. Who's to say, Fox, this isn't your Alabama LSU? This is your Alabama LSU. You call it the annual Big Night Kickoff because, like Death Valley at night, there is nothing like a whiteout at State College, Pennsylvania at night. There's nothing like it. And the Penn State day atmospheres are great too. Like, they bring it in the day as well. But in the night, man, there ain't nothing like it. That's my idea. I should say Fox should do exactly what CBS did with LSU and Alabama. Penn State, Ohio State, the annual Big Night Kickoff. Fox can do it. They've done a great job marketing Ohio State, Michigan as the game, as they call it. Who's to say this can't be the annual Big Night Kickoff? Boom. Right there. Ideas. I guess I'm full of them. Fox, I'll be taking contract negotiations soon. Just kidding. Anyway, let's talk about the game now. In terms of the game itself, look, there were times where I was watching Penn State and they would line up Warren at quarterback and have all of these trick formations and wildcat formations. And what I kind of read into that was Penn State pretty much said to themselves, okay, I'm not sure we can beat Ohio State straight up. We've got to get creative. Flat out. And Penn State, man, they can compete with Ohio State at every single position except wide receiver. And that exactly right there is why they lost the game. That costed them the game. Because, man, this is what Jim Knowles did, Ohio State's defensive coordinator, by the way. He sent the house. Identity stat, Drew Allar was blitzed 40% of his dropbacks. He was blitzed a really good amount. And when you have that many guys in your face and have such a short amount of time to throw it, your receivers have to be able to win in one-on-one coverage, and Penn State's receivers were not. They were not able to win in one-on-one coverage. So before Penn State fans and Penn State people start blaming Drew Allar, what can Drew Allar do when there are three guys that get in his face in 2 seconds and no receiver is open? What can Peyton Manning do in that situation? Really nothing, to be honest with you. And Penn State, the reason why they've had such a steady high floor, because their defensive line has been excellent, their run game has been excellent, but it's just that receiving core that has not delivered for them. They just haven't gotten the job done, to be straight with you. And that was the story with Ohio State. That was flat out the story. And that is, Jim Knowles knew, okay, this is what Jim Knowles basically said. We have the best secondary in the country, and we don't think there's anything y'all can do about it. That's exactly what Jim Knowles said. And guess what? He was right. There was nothing Penn State could do about it. There were times where Drew Allar, Davison Igmison, I cannot get that pronunciation right. Anyway, the Ohio State defensive back, number 1. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. My condolences. I'll try to get better at that. But Penn State's in the red zone. He throws a toss-up, a 50-50 ball. And guess what happens? The Ohio State defensive back rips it from him. He bobbles it, intercepts it. Is that Drew Allar's fault? No. He threw a 50-50 ball right where it needs to be. It was actually in his hands. That's the play call. But guess what? These Penn State receivers couldn't make a play on these Ohio State defensive backs. Interception, bam, going the other way. That was the theme. That was the theme, man. And Penn State only ran a play action 6 times for the whole game because the run game wasn't even getting going either. This offensive line from Penn State got annihilated. To be straight with you, they did. And that's why they lost the game. And Penn State's a good football team. I actually wouldn't be surprised if these two teams met again. I could see this being a 1v8 or a 2v7 in the second round. But if you're Penn State, you got to find a second option. When Pope Gregory XIII constructed the calendar, circa 1533, he accounted for October. But folks, he did not account for Cocktober. Because although October's over, if Saturday taught us anything, it's that Cocktober ain't over. And I wanted to show y'all this. This was a clip that was filmed on the show when South Carolina, following South Carolina's loss to Alabama. Let's play the clip. South Carolina talking to your fan base one by one because I got empathy for you guys. I feel for y'all. And growing up a Tennessee fan, I've been in this spot before. So you can do one of two things. You can look at your record and say, gosh darn it, we're 3-3, and you can complain and throw a fit and pout. Or you can look at the fact that you outgained Alabama in first downs, passing yards, rushing yards, and total yards on the road. You can understand that the only reason you lost to LSU was because your quarterback, Lenore Sellers, got injured in a really questionable call. Remember, I'm going to go back to this. South Carolina didn't punt the entire first half when they played LSU. Robbie Ashford comes in, and he produces a 3 QBR, and they have 1 touchdown in the entire second half after dropping 24 in like 1.5 quarters. So that being said, outgaining Alabama in every single facet, should have probably beat LSU, beat Kentucky 31-6. This is not a sustainable way of losing. So that proved to be true. And South Carolina was way better than what their record said coming into this game. There's no doubt about it. Because South Carolina, they are one of the biggest, most physical teams in the SEC. I mean, Rocket Sanders, Joshua Simon, those guys are tanks. Lenore Sellers, I mean, the amount of times that Texas A&M had a guy, the first play of the game, where I was like, oh man, it's going to be one of those games, where Texas A&M was able to blitz him completely unread by South Carolina. Didn't see it coming. And Lenore Sellers, despite having a guy in his face in like 0.5 seconds, gets out of it somehow. Because he's got, I talked about this, there are quarterbacks that have wiggle speed, and there are quarterbacks that have just insane elusiveness, straight line speed. Lamar Jackson's an example of wiggle speed, and Jalen Milroe is an example of just downright elusiveness. Lenore Sellers is one of the most elusive, straightaway running quarterbacks in college football. That guy is freaking fast, and he's big. At 6'2", 240 pounds, he's a tough guy to bring down. I mean, the amount of, not just him, but the amount of broken tackles that South Carolina had in that game was nuts. It was crazy. They couldn't tackle Lenore Sellers in the backfield. Josh Simon, too. Rocket Sanders, as I talked about. This South Carolina team, and they've been in that mid-tier, honestly, because they haven't had this. Remember, Spencer Rattler was getting sacked over and over and over and over again in his time at South Carolina. That's not an issue. South Carolina 0 sacks given this game. And here's an identity stat for you to say South Carolina destroyed Texas A&M in the trenches. I'm going to put this bluntly. Destroyed Texas A&M in the trenches. South Carolina, 6.7 yards per carry as a team. What did they give up? 3.5. This defensive line was all over Texas A&M. And we know how good this A&M run game is. We saw what they did against LSU. But that right there tells you everything you need to know. This Carolina O-line, man, freaking dominated. They brought their A game, and they didn't look back, flat out. This South Carolina team, they're big, they're physical. Beamer's building something in Columbia with this redshirt freshman quarterback in Lenore Sellers. They're building something. And let me say this as well in terms of Texas A&M, to where, yes, I did bet on South Carolina, to be honest with you. And A&M, you got a redshirt freshman going on the road, night game on ABC, hostile atmosphere. You're getting a team who's better than their record says. They're hungry. They're determined, like every team is, but this team especially. It's possible A&M just fell in a trap. This is a classic trap game. And it is possible that A&M got a little bit overhyped. I'm saying this isn't a definitive statement, but it's a possibility that A&M got a little bit overhyped after that LSU win. Because LSU prepared for Connor Wegman. It's clear they weren't prepared for Marcel Reed. Because when Marcel Reed showed up in that LSU game, that entire game changed. And LSU wasn't ready for it. Because Texas A&M ran the ball down their throats. South Carolina is probably 2 times more physical than LSU is. They are great in the trenches. And South Carolina had a week to prepare for it, man. And they did. If you give LSU a week to prepare for Marcel Reed, that could be a different outcome. We can play the what ifs all we want. I will say that. But it could be a different outcome. And South Carolina had a chance to prepare. A&M, man, it's a tough loss for sure. I'm not denying that. But this team can still go to Atlanta. All that you got to do is beat Texas and beat Auburn. And that's a possibility. And then boom, they're in there. They're in Atlanta. South Carolina as well. They've eclipsed the hard part of their schedule. They're going to be favored in every game except the last one against Clemson. South Carolina's played the hardest strength of schedule in college football so far. That being said, South Carolina to make the CFP at plus 15,000 is worth a sprinkle on DraftKings. Do I think that's going to happen? No. But we've seen the committee give these lower tier record SEC teams the benefit of the doubt. And South Carolina, with a big win against A&M, if they beat Clemson as well on the road, along with having no bad losses, by the way. They've lost to LSU, in which their quarterback got hurt in the first half. They lost to Alabama because they didn't get the 2-point conversion, right? And they got crushed by Ole Miss, I'll say that. But no bad losses for them. They check some boxes. That could be worth a sprinkle. But anyway, South Carolina, 44, Texas A&M, 20. Why did South Carolina win? Brute physical strength. Flat out the reason. That'll be it on the College Sports Guy. Thank y'all so much for listening to this week's edition. We've got a Week 11 preview coming out. I don't know if y'all seen the Week 11 slate, but man, it is stacked. Alabama, LSU at night. Georgia, Ole Miss. That's a PEG for Alabama and LSU. That's a PEG for Ole Miss potentially as well. Signing off. This is Harris Hicks, the College Sports Guy. See y'all next week.